Hey friends, so I want to talk today about deck dialogues. I've been doing like a shit ton of them over the past several weeks as I've been preparing for my 78-day tarot challenge, the Drop 'em 78, right? Where you commit to one deck, going through it one card at a time, one day at a time from October 15th through December 31st. So I've been trying to figure out like what deck am I going to use? And I've been doing these deck dialogues. But it's become clear over the past several weeks that, there have been some comments and questions that it may not be obvious what I'm doing, or even that I'm doing something, that there is a method to this madness. So I wanted to create a video today to just talk about what a deck dialogue is and what it isn't, and why I use it. So let's begin with what a deck dialogue isn't. Very deliberately, the deck dialogue isn't a tarot spread. Now, tarot spreads, this is like the core of what we've all learned. We've all learned how to read the tarot by laying out cards in a spatial arrangement, where each card in that arrangement, this is at least the Anglo-American tradition, where each card in that arrangement has a positional meaning. This way of thinking about the tarot and reading the tarot goes back to probably the 19th century, but for most of us Anglo-American readers, it really comes into play with Arthur Edward Waite rediscovering, aka inventing the Celtic cross, right? The Celtic cross, 10 cards laid out in a pattern that itself has a kind of visual meaning. Like the Celtic cross literally gives us a cross, right? It literally lays out the cards in the shape of a cross. And then each card in that arrangement, each position has a meaning assigned to it. Now, a deck spread in the Anglo-American tradition, this tradition I'm describing, the spread may be very simple and basic. It might just be 3 cards in a line with past card, present card, future. Or it might be more visually complex and more conceptually complex, like a deck spread that's addressing how to reignite passion in your relationship. And maybe the cards are 5 cards laid out in the shape of a flame. And then, one card is where the passion began. Another card is what I truly desire. A third card is what they desire. Fourth card is what toys will we use? Fifth card is what's the outcome? What's the climax? Whatever. So the spread might be visually complex and each position might be conceptually complex, or it might be really simple, like past, present, future. That's the Anglo-American tradition. The continental tradition of deck spreads is more open, and this is a kind of way of working with the cards spatially and visually that, I associate with people like Yoav Ben Dov and the open reading, or with Alejandro Jodorowsky or Camelia Elias or Enrique Enriquez or Robert Place, where typically you lay out 3 cards and then you look at the figures in the cards themselves and you say, let me just demonstrate, you go, okay, oh, that doesn't help. Okay, so here's the emperor, and here's the moon, and here's the sun, and the emperor is looking toward the moon and the sun. And so I'm going to read now this layout of 3 cards spatially by starting with the figure who points the direction by their gestures, by their position on the card. So in the continental tradition, instead of the cards having an assigned positional meaning, there's a much more open way of, just as Camelia Elias would say, just read the cards, right? Just look at the damn cards. There's a more open way, but it still is spatially oriented. It's still saying, okay, who's looking at whom? Where are people looking? Oh, look, they're looking at each other. And many of us do a combination of these 2 spatial types of reading. We might assign meanings to the positions of the cards in the spread, and then we might also really be curious about what the figures, where they're looking, right? We orient spatially, and it makes sense that we do so because that's how we read text. That's how we read, how we read in general, right? How we read words on a page. And that's how we learn to read words. We sound out the letters and look at, what letter comes first. And then we go, H-O-R, horse, right? Okay, right. If you've ever played the basketball game horse, you might know why that was the word I chose. Anyway, all right, so look, that is a totally fabulous way to read the tarot. It does bring with it a certain problem, which is that, and this is a problem I think that a lot of people at the beginning of their tarot journey really struggle with. Once you've laid out cards in a positional way, now you have to find a way to create the narrative, the smooth narrative that unites all the cards. And if you're doing a very, very highly structured tarot spread, let's say, you're trying to wonder, what is my stumbling block in life? And the card that is about the block itself is, I don't know, something really positive, like the 10 of Cups. And then you have to go, oh, wait, how is the 10 of Cups a block? Oh, and then you have to invent some reason why happiness and community and love and fulfillment is a block. We've all been there. We've all been very creative in those moments, or found our creativity. But it is sort of an artifact of the tarot spread that we end up, first of all, laying things out in this sequential way and then having to put it together, right? So there's some problems with it. It's also, I feel like, it's reductive. It's like if all human language just had to follow a set pattern, like every sentence had to be subject, verb, object, as if, there's no suppleness in the way that these elements can be separated and combined. And it just, in the end, it doesn't have the kind of improvisational, fluid movement of the music of actual human communication. It's static, right? I mean, it's spatial. It's like, here's the pieces. Now I have to put them together. When I'm trying to get to know a deck, right? When I'm first trying to encounter a deck, when I'm trying to audition a deck, as it were, for something like the Drop'em 78, I want, especially in those instances, I want my interaction with the deck to be fluid, to be as fluid as possible. I want to see how it is that I communicate with the deck. So in those moments, particularly in the moments where I'm trying to audition a deck for its use, or I'm trying to get to know a deck for the first time, instead of doing a static spread, certainly instead of doing a deck interview spread where I have each card in the spread having a position, a meaningful position, instead of that, instead of working spatially with my cards, instead of using space to structure my communication with my cards, I will use time, meaning that I will ask my deck a question and I will receive its response, and then I will paraphrase what I'm hearing in that response and picking another card to ask another question. I'm going to engage in a dialogue, in a conversation, as opposed to lay out a static pattern. Does this make sense? So the real mover in a deck dialogue is my activity of picking a card or two and then interpreting it in a form of paraphrase. So just like conversation, particularly conversation where I'm trying to really make sure that I'm hearing the other person, like the kind of conversations that we learn to do if you've ever gone to couples counseling and you're like having, you're having tension with your partner. I'm not saying that that's ever happened to me. I never have tension with my husband. That kind of mode of interacting that couples counselors will sometimes point you to, where you say something and then the counselor says, now spouse, how did you hear your beloved's words? Can you say back what you heard? And say it in I statements, like, I'm hearing that you're saying blah, 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 right? This form of paraphrase allows us to make sure that we're hearing each other. And so this is how a deck dialogue unfolds. So let me demonstrate it now with a brand new tarot deck, new to me, which is the Rosebud Tarot. I received it in a trade at Newt's at Northwest Tarot Symposium, and the artist is Amanda Lee Stillwell, and the writer of the little guidebook is Diana Rose Harper. It's really actually very lovely. This is not the indie edition. This is the Wiser Red Wheel edition. It's really nicely produced, by the way. So I don't know this deck at all. I just looked at it very briefly when I was doing this trade. These are the pretty backs. So I'm going to engage in a deck dialogue with this deck to just sort of see how it interacts with me, see what it has to say. And in fact, I'm just going to begin with a really open-ended, Rosebud Tarot. What do you have to say to me? What do you have to share with me? How are you showing up in my world right now? What do you want to share with me? And I will often begin a deck dialogue by picking 2 cards. Why 2? Because the tarot thinks in dualities. It's always giving us, heaven and earth, good and bad, right and left, light and dark, male and female. It gives us these endless dichotomies or dualities. And then it invites us to synthesize, to find the union between the two. So when I pick 2 cards that can kind of help me elicit more clarity, elicit an initial something, okay? All right. So Rosebud Tarot, what would you like to share with me? How do you want to show up in my world? So I'm just gonna pick the top card, which is Velocity of Earth. So that is the Knight of Pentacles, basically, in this deck. Velocity of Earth. Oh, that's pretty. And then I'm picking a card on the bottom. So, and I'm not going to worry about reversals. Let's try to keep this a little bit simpler. So Sovereignty of Earth. Ooh. Okay, so Knight of Pentacles and King of Pentacles. So now I'm going to paraphrase what I think it's saying. And I'm paraphrasing it. Again, this is in order to have a conversation. I'm not laying cards out. I'm not giving positional meanings to the cards that I'm pulling. I am instead trying to engage in a living, organic process of communication. Why? Because I want to know what this deck is all about and how it's interacting with me and how it affects my intuitive process, right? I'm interested in process here as much as in content. So I'm engaging in process with this deck. Okay, Velocity of Earth, Sovereignty of Earth. So are you saying that you're going to actually, this is your goal is going to be to ground me, both to help me find movement in groundedness, but then also just stand firmly in my place and allow the flowers to bloom? Is that, let me see what the guidebook has to say. Is that what you're saying to me? So Velocity of Earth. Trying to find the quartz. So Sovereignty of Earth. Legacies, architecture, an ethic of judicious endurance builds bounty, but an ethic of shared creation generates generosity. So this sort of sense with the King of Pentacles of how we can create bounty through sharing resources. And the Velocity of Earth, stabilizing the speed of change accelerates accomplishment, stamina's recompense. So grounded drive, as is the Velocity of Earth, as opposed to Legacies, architecture. So how do we, so you're saying, I think, how do I create this grounded energy that's propulsive, but also is generative and generous? So you're wanting to help me, kind of anchor my drive and my sort of ground me in the work that I'm doing. I mean, I'm struck that these are 2 court figures. So this feels like you're saying this is about me and how I use my energy, and you want to help ground that? Is that what you're showing me, what you can do with my energies? Is that right? 2 of Earth. Okay, another Earth card. So yeah, you're saying you want to give me balance. Is that right? You want to get, I feel like this is confirming. So you want to give me balance. How are you going to do that? Am I right that you want to give me balance, but then how? Pulling another card. 5 of Earth. Shit, I'm getting tons of Earth from this deck. That's really interesting. So by helping me deal with my sense of poverty, what does it say here with the 5s and Earth? Perceived lack. If you cannot find what you seek, look differently. You'll find what you need. Okay, so helping me with my sense of lack. Wow, this is pretty powerful. Okay, helping me with my sense of lack. Wow. All right. I feel like I have a strong sense of what this deck is really about, helping ground me in my movement in the world, for sure, and helping me kind of work with a sense of lack, trying to find abundance and the blossoming, the budding of the roses. Am I missing anything here? Am I missing anything or not understanding things? Is there anything more? 5 of Fire. Okay, so 5 of Wands, another 5. And this is a little shadowy card for me, the 5 of Fire, because it often has to do with feeling embattled and feeling like I don't have allies, and instead I live in a world of competition. Conflict. Fighting fire with fire creates clarity in the aftermath, ashes. So you're saying, I think, that you want to help me work with this sense of conflict and make my way through it to find clarity. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So this is a process-oriented mode of reading. The paraphrasing I'm doing is to help propel the reading forward, to help me articulate what I think I'm seeing in the cards, and then also to invite a further response. So this is about building a relationship with a particular deck. And that's why I use it for the purpose of choosing my deck for the Drop'em 78. If I were to craft a kind of deck interview, like, what do you have to teach me? What are the blind spots that you see in me? What are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? If I did that, I mean, that's another way to yield meaning. But the deck dialogue gives me the fluidity of relational response with my deck. And that will actually tell me everything I need to know about both what the deck has to teach me and how I play with that deck, what sides of me it brings out. By the way, as I'm talking about, I don't know if you can hear this, my stomach is like growling as I'm talking about lack and abundance and what is being brought out of me. My stomach's going, okay. My stomach is in dialogue with all of y'all. All right, I think that's all I got this morning. Thank you, as always, for your practice, and don't be a stranger. Toodles.